Hi everyone. So this meeting
Hi.
is being recorded.
Hi.
Awesome. I'll present.
Just for the video recording, we're Monday, May 15th.
So this is what we have on the agenda. There's this design review for federated HPL, and I think Irfan is there. I can see him. And apart from that, I don't have much. If anyone wants to add anything, you can feel free to add it while we discuss the design proposal. We can add anything below.
Can we do the other things before proposal as we discussed last time?
Sure, we can do that.
Hot topic is both post-submit CI and pre-submits broke over the weekend. Shashi can add more context. I noticed it too on Saturday sometime, but I really did not have time to get in front of a computer. Shashi sent a fix last night. Shashi, can you add some details or context?
Actually, I just was looking at the CI and I saw some of the service tests started failing. I just debugged and found like a new PR which added a field in service object was introduced, and that was not taken care in Federation. So Federation started doing a lot of reconciling and a lot of tests were timing out. So okay, to fix it, probably simple fix was to do it in the controller, but we discussed, like Madhu and me discussed, and we found like similar to KTS service object, like in the API server itself, we should be taking care of a few things like the cluster IP allocator or node port allocator. Similar to that, we don't have anything in Federation right now. So probably we should be fixing those. Okay, apart from the actual issue. Okay, so right now our pre-submit tests is like we do daily deploy and do parallel testing for each PR. So there has been slightly a lag in detecting if anything incompatible is merged into KTS cluster. So we kind of detect it a little late. Okay. Yeah, and that should be okay, maybe. But if we do pre-submit test blocking, maybe it could be a problem. Like the Federation
So if a PR goes in and the clusters are refreshed later on, the test would start breaking later on, and someone would have to manually go and detect which PR was it that broke the tests.
So this problem is related to like the backwards compatibility issue, is it not?
Yeah, it is also a backward compatibility issue.
So if we solve that, if we move ahead with actually detecting when fields are not supported in the clusters versus the Federation control plane, and is this something we can overcome? And I mean, we'll still have to fix it. I mean, it'd be good if we had an indication that there was breakage, but at least the tests, not breakage if there was a skew, but at least the tests wouldn't fail immediately. You'd have like a warning rather than an error.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so maybe that sort of puts more priority on having a solution for backwards compatibility. We kind of have, I don't know, Nikhil, you did good work on sort of highlighting maybe potential solutions, and maybe that's something we could get some part of in this cycle just to fix the testing problem.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he'll be able to get anything in this cycle, but I agree that this adds more weight for us to prioritize it. So I don't know if anyone is willing to take it up. Yes, we did discuss some potential solutions and we have like some idea of how to fix it, but I don't know if anyone has free cycles.
If somebody else wants to take it on, if not, it may be something I'd be willing to at least start looking at.
Awesome.
Would we be interested in a potential Band-Aid for now as well? Like it might be in the reconcile process there if it just handled the new object in a way that it would validate the reconciliation still and not keep trying to reconcile it over and over again as a temporary fix until we get the bigger thing done.
I guess I'm curious what you mean by temporary fix. Like,
yeah, I'm not sure either. So I was just thinking maybe there's a way of handling it without failing and just keep trying over and over again. That's all. So maybe it is just the more permanent fix there.
If you can come up with something easy, then please do. But I don't think when we were discussing it, there was any obvious low-hanging fruit.
That's what is currently happening right now. It continuously keeps doing that. And whatever we were expecting is not appearing in the federated clusters. So our tests starts failing.
Yeah. The controllers are actually already trying to continuously reconcile. The problem is tests also try to do the same thing. The tests have an expected version and the desired version, as in the got and want versions, and they don't match because there is a skew now. Because the expected version doesn't have this new field, and the version that's actually obtained has this field. We could maybe fix this test saying, okay, this is the expected behavior for now. I don't know.
I'd link to the issue anyway if people want to, if they haven't read it.
Awesome. Perfect. Yeah. Having the data at least is good so we know what the problem was.
Yeah. So in this case, a new field was added, right? Like it isn't that the default was changed.
So yeah, I wanted to add some context there. A new field was added, but here's the confusing part to me about the service object. The defaulting is happening in the registry as opposed to defaulting happening in the defaulting code. I did not understand why. Zhong added this code. I'm going to talk to him today, but it's confusing to me that defaulting code was added in the registry.
Yeah, because we are reusing the same defaulting conversion, all of that logic. So if it wasn't defaulting, we wouldn't have this problem.
Right. It also came to me as a surprise when Shashi pointed out last night that we don't use the same registry as the Kubernetes for services, which was also surprising to me, but we need to chat about it as well. Maybe not in this meeting, but we should chat about it.
Yeah.
It just occurred to me that if we have pre-submits, wouldn't it just block that change?
No, because of the third thing that Shashi mentioned in the notes there. The clusters get recycled once a day. So the change was introduced in Kubernetes. The problem won't be seen until the clusters are recycled. However, we actually started seeing the problem in CI as soon as the PR was merged.
Interesting. Why is that?
Why is what?
Like if for some reason I just blanked on the fact that the clusters would be deployed at a version that didn't include the PR that just merged. But in this case, you're saying that the change was reflecting in the deployed clusters, which I'm finding like, is there something that is redeployed on each CI run?
CI run tears down everything in the GCP project and redeploys everything each time. So
what is deployed like once a day? I'm confused.
CI and pre-submit are different jobs. CI tears down everything and redeploys everything.
Oh, I see. Okay. So post-submit versus
pre-submit doesn't.
Okay, I got it.
Because we don't know if this problem is frequent or serious enough to block every single PR to Kubernetes for like 80 minutes for this problem. So yeah, tearing down clusters really take a long time.
But it seems like effectively what will happen as of now is that the PR that probably would introduce this go in, and maybe a day
Yeah.
down the line or something, all the other PRs or many other PRs would be failing on
Yeah.
pre-submits.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, that's true. That's
Which
why
is-
that's why we should also talk about signing up people for build corp rotation now.
Okay.
Yeah. And like Maru mentioned, like if we fix the versions queue problem, then like we'll mitigate this issue. And ideally, the defaulting logic in this particular case should have been in the defaulting code, in which case we wouldn't have been broken.
Yeah,
That's the current issue, but presumably there's other issues that would occur as a result of recycling only once a day.
Mhm. Yeah, I guess the question.
And that is
Yeah,
something we
Tom.
knew, like we discussed the pros and cons, and we knew there'll be these cases where we'll get to know a day later. But the CI cases would be, CI suit would be broken immediately, so we'll know.
But we should reach out to SIG testing so they understand this is a case. Because this right now reflects badly in terms of our pass rate, just because it's a pathological case. But they should know about the recycling and what happens.
I assume like Feta and a few others already know, but
I don't know. I looked at the Slack channel and they weren't certain what was going on.
okay. Okay. And regarding build corp rotation, yeah, I guess we discussed it last time, and I think we have volunteers. It's just on me to start doing. I was trying to find a tool, but in the meantime, like we can just come up with, I can maybe send an email saying first week I'm taking, next week Madhu, next week Shashi, or like something like that. And until we have like a tool, and I wanted a GitHub handle to be routed automatically to, like you can do SIG Federation build corp on call, and it automatically pings whoever the on call is. So I wanted to add all that like fancy stuff, but I haven't been able to figure that out yet. So maybe I'll just start with simple thing out right now.
yeah, we could just add it to the calendars. I mean, people's calendars right now, and then when we have a better tool, we switch over to that.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Can-
I'll probably,
Yeah.
I'll take an action item to send a calendar invite. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
And I assume our test are, oops, green now. Awesome. Yeah, these services tests were failing. So good to see back to green. All right. Are there any open PRs that people are blocked on or waiting for, or is there some contentious issue anyone wants to bring up?
Yeah, I think the sync controller refactoring that's going on, Maru did most of the work, and I think Dan
Jonathan
Wilson
is also doing. Yeah.
yes, and like Dan Wilson has a PRE based on it. I have a PRE based on it, so that needs to be finalized.
I think the Nikhil you reviewed, and I just need to fix some error messages.
Yeah.
And Jonathan's also reviewed. So hopefully, if that's the only change, I can get that in this morning. We can get it merged and then block people.
Cool, that should be okay.
Awesome. All right. Design proposal.
Yep, we can move to that.
Nikhil and Madhu, I have a few other issues. Like one of them, which has been blocked for a while, is upgrading the etcd. I don't see any task related to that, but what do you see? Like we should be able to upgrade the etcd in this cycle?
You mean upgrade to V3?
Yeah, V3.
Yeah, technically we should have done that last cycle, so we are already overdue. I don't know who has time to build the cat though. Do you have time to do it?
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah.
Okay. It might qualify as a feature. I should check with the PMs. But if you already, we might already have an open issue in the core repository, right?
Yeah, should be.
Assign it to yourself and start working on it. I'll check with PMs about feature report entry.
Sure.
So that kind of begs the question about upgrades in general. We have some upgrade testing related to the sync controller, and hopefully we'll have more this cycle. But do we have a documented procedure for upgrade? And is that something we're targeting this cycle or next cycle?
I think etcd3 upgrade in Kubernetes cluster, it is well documented. But for Federation, we need to see the procedure, like whether the same applies or like does anything extra we need to do in Federation.
Right, but not just etcd, but I'm talking about like the control plane itself.
Oh, okay.
And I think Shashi, you had sent a doc sometime back.
Yeah.
You were planning to do this, right?
Yeah, it was more like an automation test framework, but it doesn't outline like what's the procedure of exactly doing the upgrade. It's like automating the test framework actually to find out. Right now we are finding a few issues, right? Like we cannot upgrade Federation control plane before the federated clusters. So like that's like a permutation and combination of all types of upgrade.
But did we implement that? I did see the
Yeah.
doc, but I don't know what's the status.
Implementation is done. We need to start adding the test cases. I mean, it's not there in the CI.
Oh, it's not?
I mean, we have test merge, but I don't know that they're running. And I mean, it's a fairly simplistic, like upgrade, like create an object, check that it's propagated, upgrade, make sure it's still propagated. I'm not entirely confident that that's a good like validation of upgrade. It's a good starting point, but we haven't really spent a lot of time on that. And I guess maybe it's just not a huge concern for 1.7, but certainly before I would use something in production, I would want to know that I could actually migrate to future changes, especially if a lot of the behavior is going to change.
Yeah. I think the plan was to get started with like those simple CRUD operations, like you said, and add more complex operations over time. So I would agree that we need to prioritize upgrade testing. And Shashi, can you like just briefly explain what's the status? I didn't understand. You said they're not running in CI. So
yeah. So actually, the test framework exists, and I think sync test is already there in the test cases. Okay, so we need to add the CI job for the upgrade. Okay, that is not yet done, but the test framework itself is done. I mean to say the test code is done.
And is there any test cases?
Yeah, one submitted by Maru related to sync test cases are there.
Yeah, we get the same sort of framework that enables integration and E2E testing also enables upgrade testing. So as types are migrated to the sync controller, they get all three types of testing for free. But it sounds like the thing that we need someone to create the job, which probably whoever created the existing jobs is on the hook. Or better, maybe that person could guide somebody else through it, or more than one person, so that they're not on the hook permanently for managing the jobs. I'm probably speaking to Madhu in this case, but
actually there are way too much permutation combination right now. Like to set it up, like what's the right way, we need to figure it out. Like,
well, I'm not saying like do them all, but like maybe get a few people do an initial one that just does an upgrade from 1.5 to 1.6 or 1.6 to 1.7, and then those people can be responsible for maintaining those permutations over time.
Yep, we can figure that out. Yeah,
I agree. We should add one so that we can at least see like what all cases there are, and at least add 1.5 to 1.6, so we have some confidence, and then add more over time.
And so we actually, when we merge the tests, we actually have some confidence they're running. Because I mean, I wrote them and they compile, but they've never run.
Okay. Yeah, let me add that one single job. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Do we have GCP project and everything set up, Shashi? I can't remember the details.
Yeah, GC project is not yet there, Madhu.
Okay, I can help with that.
Yeah, sure.
And is this something that's going to be documented, like the procedure for managing jobs, or is that? I mean, I guess I don't want to leave you guys like with all that
There.
responsibility.
Actually, in test infra, if you go, the README itself says like how to add a job, see a
Okay.
job for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Everything
think the
is done.
steps are there. It's just that you need credentials, which Madhu has. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, and I agree. As we make more changes, adding these upgrade testing will give us more confidence, and especially at CDV3 is going to be a big change. So having more tests would give us more confidence in that code. Sounds good. Okay. Now the design.
Okay. So if needed, I can just give a very brief intro on the use cases and what I'm trying to solve in this one. Or I mean, this has already gone through revisions and discussions and all that stuff since a couple of months, more than a couple of months.
So is there any open
it-
question, especially you are looking for feedback for, or like some critical
As of
component
now,
that you-
actually, no. As of now, actually, no. But maybe some use cases, additional use cases, which might be important or necessary, and which maybe people think that needs to be included here, can be mentioned. Because this obviously is not the exhaustive list of cases. It's like just some priority cases that I have taken.
Okay. In that case, I guess let's go around the room and see if anyone has any comments. And I think Krishan, you wanted to bring up a few.
Yeah, in general, I had a question as to what the use case was for. Somewhere in the document it says there's min and max values, and the min will be distributed such that any cluster in which there's replicas does not get a min replica lesser than 1. Which means you're federating this HPA across many clusters. And even if you want to support a use case like the one where I think it's one of the first ones you mentioned, where you have an on-prem cluster, majority of your pods run there, and then you have the ability to spill over into like a cloud cluster as the demand spikes in your on-prem cluster. It seems you still always have to run that one pod in the cloud cluster.
So currently, how I have thought of solving this is like using preferences while creating the HPA. The user can specify the preferences that say X cluster should have all the workload and Y cluster should not have any. Okay, and in that case, in the cluster which is not on-prem, I wouldn't create the HPA object at all. Okay. But as you mentioned, this is one point, because the underlying K8s cluster does not take the HPA object with a min lesser than 1. It will not. I mean, it will throw up an error, or it will not accept the object at all if you specify the min as 1. So this is something which is sort of an open pointer in the current design, if I see so.
Doesn't that beg the question why you're creating an HPA at all in that cluster?
Say that again, Christian?
Yeah, doesn't that beg the question, why are you creating an HPA at all in that cluster?
Yes. So that is how I am trying to, or thinking of solving it. So if in a particular cluster we do not need the auto scaling to happen, then just remove the autoscaler, the HPA from that cluster. It shouldn't, the object itself should not exist.
So that's the only solution I have right now. If there could be some better solution for this, then we can think of, or I can take suggestions.
Yeah, design-wise, it seems that the underlying Q cluster should be able to take an HPA with min 0. Like I should be able to scale down to 0.
Yeah. So that is how I would want it to be, but the current K-test does not take that as 0. It doesn't accept HPA as 0. Maybe that can be a requirement on that, or maybe I can take it up for some later date.
Okay. In that case, I just suggest
We can solve it in this way. That object.
Yeah. Okay. If that's your thinking, and then maybe the first sentence of the third paragraph in alternative 1, clarify it at that point.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll update it.
Yeah, that's the sentence that was bugging me. The other one is in general, at least the last few sets of discussions we've had about modifications to deployment controller, replica set controller, we're moving towards doing watches on the underlying objects themselves, as opposed to watches on all the pods. And that makes sense for many reasons. But
no.
Sorry.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt. Complete. Then I'll probably say.
Yeah, I mean, one of the main tenets of Federation is that it allows you to scale more than what you can scale within a single cluster. So in general, I'd move away from a principle where we do watches on all the underlying pods if if we can instead move the watch on the object that creates them.
No, I actually the suggestion in the design is that those controllers like deployment controller or replica set controller will keep a watch on the HPA object, not the pods. So if there is an HPA object which is targeted towards the particular replica set object or the deployment object, then the reconcile of those objects in those clusters will be skipped, because HPA is supposed to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, this is another point which I also thought it wasn't very clear in the design doc. You did mention the problem, saying now there'll be two sort of masters, like the deployment controller and HPA controller. But I didn't really understand which solution were you going with. Like you did say that now there are going to be 2 controllers for number of replicas of the target object. And I wasn't sure which actual solution you were going with. Maybe you can add a particular line saying.
No, that rebalancing solution to this is specified in the next one, which is the rebalancing section.
Yeah, that's
knowledge of that HPA is actively separate. Separately targeting the object has to be percolated to the Federation control plane. This thing.
So in this case, HPA will become the master controller and not the deployment or the replicas.
Yes. I can probably add a statement like you mentioned. It seems more clearer.
So in this case, then we'll have to update all these controllers like deployment, replica set, jobs to make sure to add this logic that first verify if there is a HPA.
Yes. So maybe a method or something on those controllers which can in the reconcile, which can check, just like we check if the clusters are ready or if something is pending. So if there is a target, if there is a HPA targeting a particular object in a particular cluster, skip that cluster.
Should we do that at all? I was also not very sure about what you are going to do after reading this doc on GitHub, as in the community repo, the PR. So I went and looked at the Google Doc that you have, and I saw that Google Doc has a lot more information in comments. And there was this interesting discussion between you, Marcin, and Quentin about this whole thing. And what was discussed there seemed like a better idea. Basically, the idea was to add something equivalent to rebalance is equal to false, something like, say, I think the same thing is being proposed for shadow replica set as well. Say you have a replica set, but the controller is not supposed to scale up or scale down the replicas or reconcile the replicas. And then the HPA controller actually controls this field. As in, when you add a new HPA target with that replica set as a target, the HPA controller then goes and sets that field to true. So that replica set controller, federated replica set controller won't actually reconcile. That was my understanding, and I thought that was a better approach than teaching every single controller about replica set the other way around.
I thought that.
But to do that, go ahead, Madhu.
Sorry, I guess I was under the impression that if you had an HPA managed resource, it would still be propagated if it was intended to be propagated by the controller. It just, you wouldn't set like the replicas or any of those fields, and that would be the responsibility of the HPA. Does that make sense?
Right. I think that's still
Yes,
true.
yes.
It's just about the replicas field. Everything else will be propagated and reconciled. It's just the replicas field which won't be reconciled.
So, I mean, I guess the upside to things kind of being migrated to the sync controller is we're not really talking about upgrading a whole bunch of code. It should just be the sync controller that gets a check for whether it needs to do the scheduling step or whether it's something like it just skips that. Does that make sense, Irfan?
It does. It does. So, but this calculation or this check, if the HPA exists or not, either ways it has to be done in either the HPA controller when it's created or when it's creating an HPA in a cluster, then it has to set that, and it has to be per cluster. It's not like the whole rebalance just stops. This check has to be per cluster. That if say 5 clusters are federated, then for 3, the HPA controller might say that I exist over there, and for 2 I don't, for whatever reasons. For HPA reconcile has happened, and user has given preferences only for 3 clusters. For 2, user doesn't care or doesn't want to care, kind of stuff.
Yeah, so in that case, it's a lot more, I would say, a bit more complex than the shadow one. In the shadow one, it was simpler that if it has that annotation, we totally ignore, like we won't even create it in the underlying clusters and would do nothing. In this case, we want just the replicas field to be like not sent and in some particular clusters. With shadow, it was more like, don't do it at all in underlying clusters.
Yep.
It'll be even more complex if we take into consideration that users can actually go and modify the replicas count.
Yeah.
Correct. And on top of that, there is the fourth factor also, that is the scales interface. So these objects can be targeted. Yeah. So these objects can be targeted using scale sub-resource also independently. So if that is exposed in Federation, then we have to have some feedback over there also.
But scale is just a proxy to changing the replicas field. That's it. It doesn't do anything other than that. So it's
correct. So what I mean to say is it is exposed to the user. So user can either do kubectl scale, or user can call the API, and user would expect that if he calls that API, then the replica should be scaled to that number. And at least if not, then there should be some reason sent back or failure sent back to the user.
Yeah. But isn't that same even in a kube cluster? If I have an HPA controls the replicas for my replica set. And if I manually scale, HPA will overwrite it, right?
I think it happens like it is scaled and then HPA will overwrite after some time.
But the complication here is if you have 5 clusters and if your HPA controller has decided to run in 3 clusters, and if your user goes and modifies the scale or the replicas count in the replica set, how are we supposed to decide how much we should keep for the remaining 2 clusters and how much belongs to the 3 auto-scaled clusters or auto-scaling clusters, whatever it is?
So in this case, I assume the other 2 clusters don't even have the replica set, because if they have at least one replica, then the HPA would be there. And it's because you have specified your preferences that you prefer those 3. So even our scheduler will say if there is space in those 3, it will distribute those replicas only to those 3 clusters. If not, then it will spill over to the other 2.
I guess I thought there was there was a And if that were the case, I kind of agree with Madhu's question. At least I think I'm getting the question that maybe there needs to be sort of a separation between your min-max replica count for HPA managed clusters versus non-HPA managed clusters.
No, actually, I don't see a use case for that. If your replica set is either your replica set at the federation level, either it is managed by HPA or not. And if it is managed by HPA, then all the replica sets and all the underlying clusters are managed by HPAs. If not, then like none of them are.
Okay, that's. I'm not sure that that was entirely clear in the doc or in the notes. I should clarify that.
Okay, I'll try to put some clarification for that.
Also,
Do they understand that the underlying clusters are doing a watch back to the controller in the
You mean
design?
back to federation?
Yeah, back to the federation. If so,
Oh, you mean-
has there been
No.
thought around what credentials it would use to do that?
No, we don't want underlying clusters to watch back to federation.
Okay, good.
And I assume in this case, yeah, to clarify, they don't. At least that's my expectation. The replica set controller would see that there is an HPA in the same cluster.
Okay.
Also, I didn't see any consideration for rolling updates. I think that affects the design somewhat.
Yes.
Yeah, that is.
I was
That
just
is-
noticing that HPA only supports deployment rolling update and not replica set rolling update. So that is probably something that needs to be well documented or publicized.
Okay.
I didn't understand the comment that HPA doesn't support replica set rolling update.
So that if you look at the documentation for HPA for Cube, it says rolling updates are supported for deployments, but not for replica sets. So if you were federating replica sets and you're using HPA and you're expecting rolling updates to work, it will not work. And that's just a limitation of the underlying implementation for HPA.
Yeah, just replica sets by themselves do not support rolling update, and like that's the value addition that deployments bring in, that you can have rolling updates. And
Yeah.
just
I mean,
replica sets don't.
like I said, it's just like it's a documentation sort of net. Well, it's just kind of a gotcha if you're not paying attention to the docs in Cube, and we should probably make sure that we're similarly trying to bring that to people's attention.
Okay, so let's say for deployments, what complexities can there be?
I mean, if you want rolling updates, use deployments. That's all there really is to it.
Okay, so but would rolling updates work fine with deployments with the current federated HPA proposal? I haven't looked at, but do other people have concerns or comments?
This is
Ideas?
I know Irfan, you want to answer this, but this is one of the reasons why I want you to integrate the comments that you have on your doc into the proposal itself, particularly about how you are going to link the target controller, which is the deployment or replica set controller, into the HPA controller, because that is writing out that design is going to answer this question that Nikhil is asking about deployments.
Yeah, but is there some way I can import all those? There is a hell lot of comments on that doc actually, and a lot of them are marked as resolved. And I just for the sake of clarity for the readers, I haven't marked some comments as resolved because they look like some detail in themselves.
I mean, what I was saying was not to import the comment, but actually write the design.
Get the content of that and.
Like actually write the design and explain how it's all going to work, because even after reading those comments, it's not clear to me what you're exactly going to implement. Yes, there are ideas in the comments, but there are many ideas there. So I don't know which is the one that you're considering right now, or which is the one that will be implemented right now.
Okay. I'll try to add some additional details on the, say detailed design kind of a thing.
Yeah, and I was working there. I was wondering, like with deployment, there's these special kubectl commands as well, rather than just basic CRUD operations. There's like rollout, history, all of those. Does HPA have any special kubectl command which we need to take care of? Apart from the usual CRUD and scale?
No, no, no. It is either create or update the.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
And even the two alternatives that you had given, and finally you said we want to go with approach 2, which seemed fine to me, but I would like more
No, no, no.
analysis of this, like
Conclusion
why.
is alternative.
Sorry, go ahead.
Alternative 1 is the
Yeah.
choice.
Yeah. So, but we should add some more like pros and cons of each one and why we went with one rather than just
I can do that. I can do that.
one.
By the way, I actually was not sure, so I went and checked the kube control command. There is indeed a kube control auto scale.
Okay.
Auto scale eventually creates an HPA. Auto scale command is used to create an HPA object.
Yeah, but that should be taken into consideration, is what I'm saying.
It is Aka. I mean, it's like a proxy. You can directly create an HPA object, or you can say auto scale and provide parameters command line.
All right.
Okay.
But since we have these cluster annotations, you kept referring earlier on to cluster annotations where some objects would exist in a cluster, others would not exist in another one. Even though this is a proxy, you have to speak to how that affects that annotation, what the default would be.
So I assume in this case, you won't be
is-
able to use our federation specific annotations. If you want that, then you'll have to write your own YAML and do kubectl create -f. This is like a sort of a wrapper over it to make it simpler for you to create it. Like we have the same for namespaces as well. You can just say kubectl create namespaces and namespace name, and we'll auto generate the YAML for you. So this eases your job if you want to create like a standard HPA, but if you want to use a more fancy feature, you need to write the YAML yourself.
Okay, so you're telling me the equivalent is create the autoscaler the same in every cluster. So split it across all clusters.
No,
Yes.
I'm saying when you create it in federation level, you can write your own YAML and do kubectl create -f and that YAML file, or you run kubectl autoscale.
I'm trying to define the behavior.
Christian, I think, is asking is what will be the default, because that can still be used at federation. So the default is there'll be no annotations. I mean, annotations won't be possible. So default is equally distribute.
Yes.
Equally distributed. Okay.
So I have a question about spreading things across clusters, because this proposal seems to be sort of geared towards what I would call the latency use case, where I want to spread things to all the clusters, maybe not all the clusters, but most of the clusters, and I want workloads running kind of just spread equally or relatively equally. But what about the load use case? Maybe I want to put things where there is available capacity, or I guess when I'm thinking about like min-max for all the clusters, that solves the use case of, I just want a certain amount of, workload capacity distributed. But what if I want to actually specify min-max per cluster?
That is what annotations can specify. That's the only annotation which I think I would be implementing support for, where you can specify. There is no point of, in the current common annotations, there is a weights also, but there is no point of giving weights on an HPA. The only reasonable annotations are the min and max per HPA, where user can specifically say that in this HPA I want maybe between 1 and 10 replicas, and cluster 2 I want between 1 and 5 replicas, something like that.
So the existing annotations would provide for the spreading? I'm kind of fuzzy, because if I think about the annotations, you have the ability to set an annotation on cluster spread, like on a deployment or replica set basis. And I'm not clear, and the doc doesn't really make clear how that extends to HPA.
For example,
an idea in mind, or like, because that seems like an important detail. I'm not sure it should just be implicit.
Okay, I can elaborate that also in the document. Okay. Yeah, that seems reasonable to elaborate. But just to specify right now, the current idea that I have to implement is that I will take only, or the implementation would take only the min max per cluster as annotations. Weights will not be used. If it's needed to specify separate annotation structure or something, that's a different topic of debate. But currently, the HPA object in Federation, if it is specified, it can take min-max per cluster kind of annotations. That's it.
I mean, I guess
And
that's. Sorry, go ahead.
And for example, if you have 3 clusters, you can specify min-max for 2 clusters. Third cluster could be omitted or not. I mean, there might be no annotation for the third cluster. Then the remaining would be taken for that cluster. Or if there is no remaining, then only 2 clusters get the HPA.
I mean, it's not really specific to HPA, but the current mechanism for annotating and providing an indication of where you want things put. I mean, I think we discussed the fact that it's like if you have a hard number and like, oh, I want 3 here and I want 3 here, and I want, X total. I mean, if you add clusters or like, to me, like weighting, I don't know. It seems like weighting is something that we need to support. I don't think it's specific to this proposal, but this is just one more use case for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably pieces into your desire to solve the policy thing as well, right? Because
yes,
having to specify the min and max on an individual cluster basis wouldn't be very good. Being able to do that based on a cluster selector would be better, but having an overall policy would really probably be where we want to go.
Actually, that Torrance proposal of policy-based selection, that is something which can be the advanced use case of this thing. So I have already put one question to him, and I sort of need more discussion with him. We can use that policy-based mechanism further. But first, I need to put in the basic implementation at least to prove that, yeah, this works in this much. Then we can extend.
So I did have one question for this annotation. Are you going to reuse the same annotation that we have for replica set deployments, or are you planning to add another?
So currently I am planning to use the same annotations because they do have that min-max numbers, which I need. Weights is something which I'm going to omit for use.
And are you going to omit weights like just for now as first implementation? And do you see us implementing it in future, or you're saying not?
No, I don't see weights having any. Weights having any logic on HPA. So I don't think that is needed. It's needed per se.
Then shouldn't
Really?
you?
Sorry,
Sorry.
Madhu.
Yes, Manu, I actually need a suggestion on that. That is something like that didn't directly strike my mind when there was a question from Nikhil that there is something open which you have in mind. So weights wise, I don't find any logic putting weights on HPA. What would it really mean? If something comes to your mind, you can explain.
I guess I was thinking like if I have one cluster that has more capacity or that's cheaper or something, then I would want to, I would want it to scale more in that cluster. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. The same case that Christian talked about earlier, and which you also mentioned in your talk, that I have like an on-prem cluster and I want all my replicas to go there first and then like burst over or spill over if that becomes full, then go to the cloud cluster.
Yeah, but I find that for the cloud cluster, stuff like the cluster autoscaler is much more powerful, and it allows you to reason about the problem in a much more comprehensible way, rather than just putting weights, which seem arbitrary once you think about weights multiplied by max min. And this is number of pods, right?
But I didn't understand how will cluster autoscaler solve, because I don't want to
if it's a
scale
capacity question, if it's a capacity question, and that's where the extendable capacity is on the cloud, then it's cluster autoscaler, not necessarily.
So you mean cluster autoscaler for the cloud cluster?
Yeah.
So I want that, but I also need an HPA which would increase the replica count. Like unless I increase my replica count, more capacity, like it won't schedule more.
Sure. But I'm just saying that the use case, I don't see a use case without a node autoscaler, I should say, rather. So in the node autoscaler in the cloud, then the pod autoscaler.
Okay, so yeah, I agree we need both, but yeah, so we do need weights in HPA as well. or some way of
That's where
specifying.
That's why
preference.
I don't see how weights helps you when you have node autoscaler.
Yeah,
So
so
let's say we
I
have
sort
this
of
autoscaler, but we still need a way to scale the replicas as well, right? I don't understand how would just node or cluster autoscaler be enough.
Isn't that where max comes in?
Like the max field in HP.
Yeah. I mean, I would ignore max for. I guess I don't know much. I need to know more about the cluster autoscaler, but to me, I would scale the nodes and then whatever fits based on what your metrics are, because we didn't really talk about metrics for.
Yeah, actually, I also wanted to go there.
So I can
Yes.
explain a little bit. Like the three main properties on our autoscaler are the min replicas, max replicas, and some metrics. For example, CPU utilization. Okay, min max is something which cannot be omitted currently. But if we think of say doing away with min max also, then you have to specify a particular metrics. Taking example of CPU utilization, say you can specify 70% CPU utilization needs to be targeted in this cluster. And how it does is that it averages the utilization across pods. For example, there are 4 pods, and the average utilization is calculated for all those 4 pods. And if it's the average is lesser than 70, then it can reduce the number of pods. If it is more than 70, then it increases the number of pods. Now, in this scenario, I didn't understand what to put reply weights on. Yeah, but what you guys were talking about, having some mechanism where I can specify the target capacity, or I can specify that this cluster has more capacity. So, okay, more replicas can go there, and the other cluster has less capacity. So clusters can be reduced from there. Directly doesn't map here. Does it make some sense?
No, so I was expecting weights are the weights on replicas, like, or weight on the cluster, that this is my preferred cluster.
You want to buy
That,
one.
see,
cluster
that is actually being solved by the deployment and replica set use case, right? Where you specify, okay, my cluster, maybe other cluster has more capacity, so more replicas can go there.
But in this
Autoscaler,
case, we would, yes, they are. But in this case, we are saying that HPA would take over the distribution of replicas as well. And like if the deployment sees there's an HPA, it will stop deciding how many replicas to put in. So then HPA also needs to support the same use case.
That makes sense. That actually makes sense.
Also, I have a question about this. This is not exactly using. Maybe I'm not understanding this correctly. Using weights is not exactly the answer to spillover problem, right? Because if you have weights, you're just saying how you want to scale the pods, like how fast or how slowly you want to scale the pods, but not exactly spillover, right? Am I understanding this right?
No, that's not my understanding.
Yeah, I don't think it will control the rate of creating or removing pods.
But isn't the idea of weights that you say, if my weight here is 2 and my weight here is 1, then create twice as many here. You have twice as many here as you do in this one.
Right, that's my understanding.
So weights are not a mechanism for saying like weights are not a mechanism for saying fill this bucket and then fill this bucket. They're a mechanism for saying fill this bucket at a different rate than this other bucket. I mean, you can fake it by saying like make this weight 1 million and this weight 1, but seems like that does not seem like a solution. That seems like you can't do it through a better way, but you can kind of make it work if you use like very different weights.
Exactly. You still need to scale proportionally, not scale at one side and not completely not scale at other side.
Well, if you view the HPA as something where you'll never get to steady state, then yes, you have to start reasoning about rates. But if you eventually get to steady state where you get 2 times more than on one side than the other, and you're at steady state, then I'm not thinking about rates. I'm just thinking about there are 2 times more pods in one cluster than the other.
Yeah, I have the same view as Christian, and I agree. We do want to support this, like not just the rate, and like you said, we can do it by 1 million one or whatever, like 101. we do want to support this, that this my primary cluster, put everything you can in this as long as you can. If not, then spill over to the other one. And maybe the current mechanism we have, the syntax we have to specify it. Maybe it's not, we need to make it more clearer rather than people specifying 101 as the weights. But we do have that valid use case.
But still,
How can you express that?
Right now by saying 101, like specify weights, give 100 to one cluster and 1 to the other cluster.
but
But you still have that one lingering, right?
Yeah, but with the HPA design, you always have that one lingering.
No, that's wrong. It supports min of 0 then. 101.
That problem is not specific to HPA. It's like even just think about replica set. Like forget HPA for a moment, and you want to have this distribution of replicas by using federated replica sets. The way you do it right now is 1,000,001, and yes, you would have that lingering one replica set. So maybe we need a better way to specify that.
Because it seems silly, you expose a service and then out of your 100 pods, there's one lingering that has this completely different latency constraints, and it's
Actually, what happens if I specify weights of 1 and 0? Like does 0 mean not at all, or
I don't know.
I don't know.
Zero
maybe
means
that was the way?
zero means not at all, not considered.
Okay.
Well,
Because I do remember in his doc, Marcin had this use case explicitly. Maybe I need to go back and look at it. And
right, so maybe cross-section.
So there are
Yeah, since we're kind of reusing the annotations within replica sets and deployments, and we're thinking of applying them to HPA, I think it's important to have a consistent story there.
yeah,
Even potentially have it be, because I think it's called replica set annotation, something, cluster annotation, maybe have it called just cluster annotation.
Yeah, that is what I actually tried to do first before coming on to this. I tried to just make them all common code kind of a thing. There is OpenPR for that.
yeah.
Okay. And I was thinking of using that, but we need to come to the common conclusion on using the same annotations, or we need to do some modifications in that.
I mean, I'd even support saying if we're going to standardize around those set of annotations, have a little design document around that that says these are annotations that are relevant for federation. For one, it helps the overall documentation of each of these controllers, but also there's stuff going on in core Kubernetes with taints and tolerations that seems to have a lot of crossover with this, even though it's not applied at the cluster level. And so how are we different from taints and tolerations? Because right now we're kind of operating in a vacuum with regards to what we're trying to do with selection. We didn't talk about it much. Dan just had a quick comment, but there is some concern with crossover of cluster selection.
And to answer your specific questions, I think we should reuse annotations and we should support the same use cases as replica sets and deployment does. And the things we discussed right now are generic concerns for that, the structure of that annotation, which apply to replica set deployments as well, irrespective of HPA. And like Christian said, if we have a separate design discussion around that, we should fix them. But for now, HPA should reuse the same annotation and support the same use cases. And when we fix the problem with a separate design, it will fix it for all these controllers.
Okay. And the overlap with the cluster selector, I guess for this, for HPA and for other controllers also would be this, that it's like a binary, yes or no, right? This cluster is selected or not selected.
Yeah.
So if it's not selected, it just...
Yeah, and in his proposal, Dan mentioned that like the way we'll reconcile both of them is first we'll do a selection based on cluster selector, like do a filtering, and then amongst those selected clusters, we'll see the weights based on these preferences. So that's how we'll resolve if a resource has both those annotations.
Yeah. There's no
Then how about
contention on that.
OPA?
That is fine.
OPA policy?
Yeah.
That will merge the cluster selector itself.
Okay. All right, we're coming out of time anyway.
Yeah. But I did want to like discuss metrics as well. Maybe we can do it next time. I don't know how we would like. Will we get metrics from all of them, average them out, like all the underlying clusters, get CPU utilization from all the clusters, and then average them out?
No. Actually, this is something Marcin suggested, but the main drawback with this is that the whole controller is at federation. So if federation is disconnected, then you won't do, nothing would happen in the underlying clusters. You get me, right?
So how are you planning to collect the metrics? I couldn't see much detail in the docs as
No,
well. Like,
no
it
metrics,
was
no
mentioned.
metrics collection at Federation. So it only observes the HPAs, the local HPAs from all the federated clusters, and based on the desired replicas and min max, tries to do
Okay.
decisions.
Okay.
That's
So,
this.
so the local HBA is exposed to metrics?
No, so
No,
they
they
just
don't expose
update
the
the
metrics.
desired replicas. So they do the normal computation that based on this utilization, I want more replicas. So they'll update their desired replicas, and then Federation would see, oh, these are the desired replicas and all of them. So it will update its own desired replicas.
For example, if a cluster has a max of 5 and the desired replica also has, desired replica also is 5 and current also has become 5, that means this cluster is sort of, it
Full.
can be scaled more.
Yeah.
So we update the max over there. We make it more. This is just an example, like min also is handled the same way.
Yeah.
How does that
But
equate to
one,
percentage there?
say that again, Christian. I
I
didn't
mean,
get that.
how does that tie back to percentage? If the interface from the user is 80% utilization, we're saying we're basing control of, we're promising the user we're doing limit of 80% CPU, and how we're controlling that is how we observe replicas being created.
Yes. Yes. So, for example, in a local cluster, 80% target is if there are 4 pods and they are giving 90%, make it 5. So probably the utilization will come down to 80%. But the min and max are still honored. So if the user has set 5 as the max, then it cannot go beyond 5. Okay.
Right. Agreed on min and
What we are
max.
saying is, what we are saying is that with min and max constraints, we, for example, in a local cluster, it's averaged out across the pods in that cluster. Across clusters, it's averaged out across the cluster on the observed current reported metrics. So HP objects have the current reported metrics also. So all the data that we need from the metrics, the HP objects have. It might be a 1-level delay, call it 1-level delay or lag or whatever.
So I do like this proposal that all the, like, we are reusing, or we are delegating matrix processing to the underlying cluster, and we are not adding all of that to Federation. But I can't come up with a concrete use case right now, but I think there might be a use case where, like, if we were doing it at Federation level, it would have more view of like all the clusters, and it would know that maybe I should spill over or like do increase some replicas in other clusters. Here, each HPA is just like processing at the cluster level. One of the advantages I was imagining about a Federation HPA, like why would I create a Federation HPA rather than, or I would just create multiple cluster HPAs, that the Federation HPA has more at Federation level overview of all the different clusters, and maybe it can do a smart decision based on that. But I can't come up with a concrete example right now.
And that seems very much something you could add later. You can build HPA, and I think one point is that Irfan said is that the HPA always has to work without the federation. So I think even if you have a federation level HPA cleverness, the individual clusters HPA still have to be able to operate without it. And so building it first.
And that is good in this design.
Yeah, and so that the individual clusters, right now the individual cluster HPAs will operate fine without federation control plane.
Yeah.
If later on we see, oh, there's a very good use case, we can figure out if there's a way to make the federation control plane be cleverer, the federation HPA controller is cleverer, but not breaking the constraint that the cluster's HPA controllers will still work if the federation goes away.
But yeah, that's likely to be a complete redesign, though.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
I'm just saying, I don't see how to resolve those two incompatibilities.
I mean, I think you have to, it seems like if you want to have, the federation is, one of the federation's design requirements is that it can go away. So I think if you build this assuming that the federation can't go away, that's unfortunate. And I think if it is doing the metrics collection and rebalancing, it definitely makes it more that the Federation has to be there. So this seems, the way it is now seems better for now, at least.
Yeah, I would also say maybe we spend a bit more time thinking about if we can come up with a use case. If not, just go with what is proposed. Because I do like it.
I think eventually, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was saying that the only drawback that I saw with this is a lag in decision. Otherwise, all the decisions can be made based on the data which is available on HPA objects, local HPA objects. So from a metrics like Nikhil, if you are saying that you have to collect metrics from each cluster and you would have a more fine-grained view of that, you actually have the result of the metrics. Means using the metrics, if they are averaged out and they are calculated as the current observed metrics as some 50% or 30%, that is what you are getting as a result. I think most of the decisions can be done on that.
Right. So far, this what you call the lag is the same type of lag that we'd observe with the potential design that we have with rollout, rollback with federated deployments.
Mm-hmm.
It's not around the metrics. It's around observing results and the lag, the latency and observing results.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
And it keeps the federated controllers dumb like we like them.
Yeah.
And so this is why, like, we're going through all these controllers, and mainly because of the timing at which I entered the project and all the work that Maru did. Every time I think about a new controller, I'm like, all right, what's the delta between sync and what this proposal is? And every time that delta is small, at least it makes me feel a bit more comfortable.
Yeah.
And it looks like the delta between HPA and deployments would be even smaller.
Mm-hmm.
There are two additional methods. That's what I have another PR for. There's a schedule and there is a that in fact they can be made into one complete whole, or call it big function also, a schedule function which takes in all the objects, cluster objects, federated objects, and tells what's a new view.
Okay. Yeah. So I think I don't have any major concerns with this proposal. I do like the current proposal.
I think it needs to be updated though, just to reflect, because we've had a lot of discussion, and there's been a lot of discussions in that document, and I mean, you've done a lot of work, but I don't think what's in the current design document reflects all the work you've done. So, you know, I know putting documents together is maybe not that fun, but it's for the better of the SIG and for yourself, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
I'll try to add. I have noted points from our discussion. I'll try to add as much detail. And if you still find that some detail that was there in your mind, it'll be amazing if a comment can come there. At least a community doc will also have some comments.
Cool.
Good.
Sounds good.
All right.
Anything else?
This is it. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Have a nice
Bye,
week.
guys. Yeah, have a good day.